Hi, Suren.
Hi, Lara.
Thank you for joining me on Mindful Leaders. It's so great to have you here with us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So you've been quite busy these days. Tell me lately, what have you been cooking up? What new projects you've been working on?
Very recently, on 25th of September, we have finalized our Koreez Educational Oscars 2022. That's
CODIS?
CODIS.
Right.
CODIS. In translation, it means seed or stone, how we say it. And why we name it CODIS? Because we believe that education is the seed, as is the stone of everything. So that's why we name it CODIS. The mission of CODIS, we started it back in 2021, right after the Artsakh War. The ideology and the Artsakh War itself was a wake-up call for all of us. And we completely need to understand that the historical loop in which we are right now, the core of everything is the education. So we decided to give another boost to the education and created CODIS. The mission of CODIS is to find talented students, motivate their learning process, and of course, encourage their primary leaders, teachers. So why all my 14 years being in the education field is focused on teachers, I'll try to give you a little bit of understanding, because in every nation, the teachers are 1% of the population. So let's say in Armenia, we have 3 million of population, 1%, 30,000 are teachers. In the United States, we have 324 million population, 3.4 million are teachers. And this 1% is responsible for entire civilization, because students, they see in front of them 12 years teachers, and they don't learn from books or content. They learn from the people whom they love, the people whom they respect, and people who are role models for them. So if you want to have a developed country, a better society, you need to understand who is this 1% bringing up the entire civilization. So that's why we decided to create this Oscars type of event, where every year, and this year we have more than 11,000 students and teachers participating. We have approximately 40 partners participating in our educational movement, supporting the ideology, and we're trying to boost that for every student in Armenia to understand that educated society is the future for Armenia.
Okay, so obviously you're a very big proponent for education, and you've actually built a big name for yourself in the education, especially in the educational technology area, where you said 14 years. I mean, 14 years you started off with Dasaran.
Right.
Dasaran actually won also one of the top 5 enterprises by UNDP in 2016, if I recall correctly.
Correct.
You've also been nominated and actually honored with the title of Global Leader or World Global Leader by the World Economic Forum last year. So it's evident that you have this legacy working for the empowerment or the betterment of education. Yet education in Armenia continues to be struggling, especially when it comes to, as you say, you know, this 1% of the teachers, when they're not paid well, when they're teachers constantly psychologically faced with a lot of anxiety, not because of just their work, but it's also the context in which we're in, war, trauma, pain, atrocity. So as a human being, I mean, if I'm a teacher, evidently that could also be imprinted or shared or transferred on to the students. What do you propose that there be, you know, what can we do in Armenia that would be a bit different than, let's say, in Canada, because you don't face the same problems in Canada?
Well, it's not only in Armenia. We spent 3.5 years exploring countries, actually 6 to 7 countries that have done a leapfrog after the Second World War in the field of education. And we don't need to create any new bicycles. There is a certain path that we need just to understand, realize, and adopt it. The first step, most important step, is to divide the system of education and politics. Why? Because politicians, they have from 4 to 6 years of life. Education is 10, 20, 30 years of planning. When you come as a 4-year a politician, you always have in your mind that you need to be re-elected. Then you need to come up with some show-off things just to show that you're doing something, but in reality you don't have this time frame to bring real changes. So this is the first thing that most of the world did, divided. So the Minister of Education and the ministry itself is not the policy makers, but the implementers, like CEOs, Chief Executive Officers. And you have short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans. You implement it, you hit your milestones, you stay as a minister. You don't, then you've been replaced. Not because you managed to get votes for your party, political party. So that's the first step. The second step is to create a national educational committee, which will be experts who can understand clearly what are your national targets, goals, and challenges, and what are the global challenges. Because education, you prepare people and experts who can fix the issues or where you're planning to be in 20 or 30 years, right? So all of our prime ministers, they're always saying that Armenia is a technological country and this is our primary goal. But it's just the words. If you talk about it, then what you need to do, you need to go down all the way back to the system of education and start preparing future citizens and generations who will have necessary skills and knowledge in order to take your country to this direction, if this is your primary direction. And the third and the most important change that we need to do, we finally need to understand and focus on the Institute of Teachers. Mm-hmm. So this is very important to understand that whatever you come up, whatever plan you have, there are certain implementers that need to understand your goal, have necessary skills to make this implementation. So those are teachers. And in Armenia, unfortunately, for the last 10, 20, 30 or even more, we haven't done anything for our teachers. Teachers are the most underserved category in Armenia. Their salary is the lowest, their reputation is the lowest.
But that's like that everywhere, right? I mean,
no, not everywhere. As I mentioned, the countries that we have explored, Israel, Germany, Singapore, Finland, South Korea, Japan, these are the countries that have started with this institution. And the first thing, most of the people think that it should start from increasing their income, but no. The first thing, besides Germany, all the other countries did, they increased their reputation. Because when
what does that mean, you increase your reputation?
Increase the teacher's reputation in the society. So making, in South Korea, in Japan, when you ask a student what you want to become when you grow up, they say, teacher. Who else? Because teacher is the most respectful person. So when you make this institution and this profession so demanded, so highly reputable, then a lot of people decides to become a teacher. When this comes, then you have a competition. Then from the competition, you choose the best of the best, because only best of the best can bring up better generations.
Right. But to be able to get there, you also have to modify many things in the institution. It's not just the capacity of the teacher, but if one teacher is a teacher for 3 different cohorts, let's say, we're talking elementary school or let's say even high school, I'm a teacher of math, or physical education. And I have 3 different cohorts with 30 children, which means I've got 90 children I have to take care of. And I can't really divide my attention to pay attention to the needs of each individual child's potential. I don't see the talent, that connection. So I'm not giving that kind of time. So the system is not enabling me to be able to enable students to give them the attention they deserve.
That's
and yet, we're saying we have to increase the reputation. How could we do that?
So there are, again, 3 steps. First one, as I mentioned, first of all, make the reputation of teachers go high. Second, invest in their economy. Third, and most important, invest in their skills and knowledges. When I say invest in their skills and knowledges, it doesn't mean that make the math teacher to be a better math teacher. No, you invest in their how to be a teacher, someone who knows how to transfer and give an information and educate a student. Because in today's world, teachers are no longer the only source of information. They are a pipeline between the source and the students. So they need to learn how to be this right pipeline. And it means you need to give them skills about child development process, about how to work in a high density classes. You need to give them a knowledge how to work with a non-controlled students. So many skills, but not even focusing on their particular subject knowledge. Because the world is already showing that when you increase their reputation, when you invest in their economy, then person starts investing in himself. That's the best way to invest. You invest in yourself and you become a better and better expert in your subject. But the other things, there is no certain skill set that you give to the teacher and that's it. No, it's, as you mentioned, each student learns differently, individually. And there is a huge science behind it. Proven end of 19th century by Professor Montessori and Fleming, where they said that each of us are being born with 4 different learning styles. It's visual, audio, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. But one
kinesthetic.
Is always,
let's say what, for instance, kinesthetic is what the physical aspect of it.
Kinesthetic learners are first of all those students that they cannot sit while learning. They have to move. Secondly, they need tangible things, experiments, or the most important for them, whatever you teach them, you need to project it into the real life so they can understand it in the real life. So we all have all these skill sets.
It's funny you say that because I know that, for instance, there was a child that I knew who just wasn't able to sit in class and was always constantly told by the teacher that they have to actually leave and write zegutsakir, or like some kind of a letter that they're not behaving properly in class. And meanwhile, this child had no problem. It was just basically their style of learning was to physically be up in the movement. And they're not visual learners. They're more of this kind of, so it's interesting that you say this, yet, we still are far behind in helping schools and institutions and teachers especially to really, they don't have the time to be able to devote,
Exactly.
to each individual that way.
One thing that we need to understand, and actually neither the school, the institution, neither the parents do understand why their kids are having these difficulties, or why out of 30 students in class, only 30% can progress and follow the teacher. The other 70 always need an extra support from tutors or parents.
And yet we stigmatize those 70% children as though they're not competent.
That's the worst thing that we do, because there is a nice German saying. They said, there is no bad weather understanding, there is uncorrespondent closing. There is no bad student understanding, there is uncorrespondent message. Mm-hmm. Imagine every single student can learn similarly if you adopt the lesson on the my learning preferences. Just to be very clear for the audience especially, imagine my dominant learning style by 65% is visual and only 9% auditory. But my teacher comes to the classroom and today's lesson is prepared only in a manner that I talk to you. So targeting your less developed skill, which means I am doomed not to memorize
or to absorb the information.
More information, more than you're saying, because I need visual things, I need kinesthetic things, and you're just talking to me. And then you give me this mark that I'm a bad student, and that's the worst part.
I'm not participating, I'm not active, I'm not paying attention. Meanwhile, it could be just basically my brain shut down because...
Well, actually, it's also obvious. When you take your kid, almost every single parent, no matter whether their kids are going to the best private or public school, at one point they receive a call from the school, from a particular teacher, that their kid is failing out of a particular subject. And then when they try to figure out what to do, so there is a tutor to come. So imagine the worst possible case, a student who's really, really struggling, you take it to the right tutor. The tutor puts everything away, all the academic thing, and start talking to the student, trying to understand the way they are understanding, what is their perception of education, how they want to learn. So understand the personality of this student, and then shape the lesson and adopt the lesson under my personal needs.
Which is what you're doing right now, right?
So actually all comes because of my personal case. When I was studying, I was privileged to study in Yerevan, Armenia, in one of the best schools in the downtown. But the thing was that it turns out later, when I was already in a higher education, that I am a kinesthetic learner. I need more tangible things. I need examples from real life that will help me, and I need visuals. But all the system was meant to talk to you, just talking to you, and you need to write down something. So all my life studying in a school, I was having this feeling that I'm a bad student. So finally, when I was already grown up, I went to the higher education. I started realizing, no, that I'm not bad, I'm just unique. And every other student is unique. So my mission right now with PopUp School is not to let any other student to have the same feeling that they cannot learn something or they are worse than the other student. So with PopUp, which is US-based company, we came up with an algorithm which diagnosed the teacher's teaching style and the student learning preference and then matched them each other, saying that here you go, we found a teacher whose lessons are tailored under your learning preferences. And the great part is that not only the nominations that we already get, being by Global International the Startup of the Year in the United States, but the way we are really disrupting the system of education. It means, based on our discovery, right now students receiving through our platform lessons tailored under their learning preferences.
But this is all online, right?
It's all online.
Do you not have a problem with that?
On-demand lessons.
Do you not have an issue with that? I mean, basically, it's not just the socialization. Everything is about human connection, right? In many ways. I mean, I believe that children learn better in groups than individually. Whereas here we have this, which is actually a very good tool, but at the same time, that child will just have that one-on-one tutorship and not have necessarily that medium. So you're solving a really good problem. What happens to the rest of the issue of the human connection aspect? So,
because based on my first startup, Dasaran, which was data-driven company, I'm generally always focused on data. So I'll just bring some data. So recent research that we have done, and it's been already conducted in the United States after the COVID. Right now in the United States, out of 46 million of students, almost 10%, 4 million are doing homeschooling. And the cover shows that 10% every year is growing up by 10%. So we have this very interesting discussion with the homeschooling parents and students. So the most challenging part that parents were bringing up was that their students are, detached from socialization. They're not going to school, not meeting friends and everyone else. So the rest was good. But the interesting part was students thinking completely vice versa. When you ask a student, they said, no, it's my mother's understanding about socialization, because when they talk about socialization, they think that I need to touch someone when I am sitting and talking to them. But I am socializing. I'm socializing through my games, I'm socializing through platforms, I'm socializing through Zoom, I'm going to credit, I'm going to piano, I meet some friends there, so I'm not missing socialization. It was also surprising for me when I was doing also myself this discovery, how students today are accepting and understanding socialization and how parents are understanding. My personal opinion, and we're never going to replace school, because I totally believe that school is the most important place where your kid learns the necessary skill set. But it's different perspectives that we have today about socialization.
Suren, why do you care about all this?
It's obvious and easy. at one point, look, there are several ways of understanding education. Let me give a little bit history, and then I'll answer your question. So education itself is divided on two parts. The first part called social education, which we receive at our homes from the parents, the way we're brought up, the traditions, the people that you meet. This is all the fundament of education. And then it comes the institutional education. When you are already in the institutional education, unfortunately, all the time it's trying to force you to go into competition. You're good here, you're better there, you try to be here, competition all the time. But the real philosophy of education is one and only and simple. Education helps you to find your personal happiness. Pursue your own happiness. Learn how to find your personal happiness. That's the main philosophy of education. Because when you start going deep in education, what happens? It helps you to become a better yourself, a better person, a better father, a better son, a better friend, a better partner. So education helps yourself to become a better of yourself. So I don't understand how one cannot be in this process. If you'll take a look of almost every leader in different fields that have reached or experienced success through education, constant education, not institutional one, but the constant one, that you're working on yourself. So that's one of the reasons, because it helps me to be a better Suren.
How do you actually help your kids, process any kind of pain or trauma, like I mentioned earlier, that they may actually see at school, whether it's from what they witness in the country geopolitically, or when they actually just witness some kind of a form of bullying or harassment? How do you, Suren, handle this with your children?
Well, in details, we talk a lot, and we openly talk. And we discuss and we evaluate. We're trying to figure out why it's happening like that, taking the pain or the concern and dividing it into the pieces and discussing. But the bigger picture is my main goal is to help them to conquer their own ego.
How do you do that?
It's again about education, about understanding yourself, about understanding your goals. So if we'll just take why we are in this situation, one can say that it's all about politics, it's about, resources, it's about geopolitics, but finally at the final end, it's about egos. Because in Harvard University, one thing that I learned during the meeting, there could be always the best equilibrium point that you can figure it out, which will be gainful for both sides, and that will be the best. But one wants always to get the more. But in the long run, this more are gonna bring also a lot of difficulties.
Your father has been an important role model for you. What are the lessons that you learned from him that you would actually want to leave or teach your children, your environment, your colleagues? Well,
the way I've been brought up, probably that plays the most role in my life. And my father is Armen. He's my role model, my hero. Couple of things that I can tell. First thing that my father is still every day saying that, remember, one thing that you have and you cannot bargain is your name. You've been born with this name and you cannot wake up tomorrow and be someone else. So never bargain your name. Live a life that you can be proud and your kids and your father can be proud of your name. Don't harm people. Be always, do not try to conquer or succeed through other people, harming other people. The love in the family, the most important thing that I have seen. Loving the love and the way we respect each other, and my father was bringing it. That helps me entirely in my life, in the society. And of course, the way he makes me strong. From early childhood, he was preparing me couple of things that I forgot in my life is saying I can't. He was always arguing and being hard on me when I was saying I can't do something. So forget about the word you can't, and forget about the reasons why you can. Think about the reasons what you need to do, the actions, the steps that you need to do in order to experience success, in order to bringing up 100 reasons why you can't.
Well, Suren, I can attest to that you've actually lived up to your father's standards in many ways. And additionally, you've actually taken a further step, and that's contributing to society. You know, I asked you why. I think it's important for us to know that what that why is in our life, what that purpose is. And I think you've identified, just like the letter you wrote when you were in 8th grade, what your mission is in life. And I think that you're fulfilling that mission in a very beautiful way. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me and for sharing just a little bit about what you've been doing to contribute to our society, to the empowerment and the betterment of our children, of our education system. And I wish you nothing but the best for the next chapters to come in your life.
Thank you so much for this interesting conversation. It's always wonderful meeting you. Yeah. You go deep into the soul always. I love that part, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Suren. Thank you very much.